Well, good afternoon to everybody. Well, after all the 10 systems to how to assess the recruitment, to say recruitment is irrelevant sounds a little bit offensive, but it's not offensive. That some recruitment, at different extent, depending on the way you measure, exists in RDS, there is no question. That if we open some part of the lung and we provide a PEEP sufficient to have a good gas exchange, good, viable gas exchange, that means higher PEEP in a more heavy lung is other absolutely acceptable. But the point is, the opening and closing, the keeping open, the use extremely high pressure to do this and this, is really relevant. I have to say that I have many, many doubts, which are increasing with the age. Maybe it's the unavoidable mental decay, but, you know. Let's to start some very basic consideration. First, that the pressure is an intensity property. Intensity means when we go the characteristic or specific and normalized piece of the system. Pressure is a force per unit of area. Has nothing to do with the volume of the lung. Recruitment is the capacity property. That means it has a lot to do with the dimension of the system. Therefore, all the methods, just speaking about the assessment of recruitment, which are based on some specific measure, that means to refer some intensity property, may be looked with extreme attention. As an example, ultrasound. As an example, the impedance. The electric impedance does not measure the air or the water or the recruitment, it measures the resistivity, which is the property of a transit of current through a piece of unit of tissue, not all the lung. Having said that, for the same pressure, 5, 10, 15, 45, I may have in one lung with great recruitability and with low recruitability. Here I have an example. Let's see the superimposed pressure. That means the mass, which may be inside the alveoli, outside the alveoli, but I have a given mass which compresses one good solitary alveolus, or pulmonary unit. I have 10 centimeters of pressure here. This is compressed. To keep open, I needed at least 10,01 centimeters of pressure. To open, I need a little bit more, because I had to overcome the surface tension forces. For opening and keeping open require different pressure for this reason. But if I have, instead of 1, 3,000 pulmonary units which are collapsed, for the same pressure, the PEEP to keep open is exactly the same. And the pressure depends on the doctor. The recruitability depends on the nature of the disease, leading to ARDS. Because some patients have a huge recruitability, some patients low recruitability, depends on the evolution of the system. So we call, different from the radiologist, they use the same word. For us, consolidation means something that whatever pressure you can put in cannot be open. And this typically is when you have something into the pulmonary unit, inside. If it's full of cell, debris, fibrosis, red cell, hemorrhagia, whatever, you can put whatever pressure you want, you cannot open. If you have pure water, it's questionable. We discussed with Maya for 30 years. At the end, take a beer and everybody's okay. if there is a possible shift of the water, I think if this exists, maybe it's in cardiogenic edema, not in the dense edema that we have in patients with ARDS. Then, if I have a primarily extraalveolar collapse, that means, extraalveolar increased mass as the interstitium, I have an increase of the weight, I have compression atelectasis, which are perfectly recruitable. And at different degrees, the consolidation and the recruitability are mixed in a patient with ARDS. This is an old slide, I don't remember how many years ago I did, but I think the model is still stay together, because we have some part which is opens and closed normally. Usually it's up when you see black. Then the French say focal RDS, diffuse RDS, patchy RDS, and so on, are all different words to publish one paper without introducing really different concept. The concepts are very simple. You have an increased mass, which may lead to a smaller weight collapse, and for opening this one is not great pressure required, 20 centimeters are okay, or you have, after some time, the complete reabsorption of gases, and these are sticky atelectasis, and the pressure required to open a sticky atelectasis are higher. And then we have a part that you have to leave the God of the nature to take care, as, let's say, one lobar pneumonia, a pneumococcus. You don't recruit anything. You give antibiotics. Sometimes you don't give antibiotics. You wait. And this, Pietro already showed it. When we did this study, we were not really expecting something like that, because I did not expect to have well, I have to say that whatever I did in my life, very rarely I found what I planned. There was always something different. But, you know, here we have some patient with a tremendous amount of recruitment and some patient here. Now, the problem is the term recruitment. Recruitment is a military word. When the people have to go to the war, I recruit the soldiers. So recruit means to go from a status A, civil, to the status B, soldier, or from the status A, collapsed, to the status B, not collapsed. This is our definition of recruitment. Then, if you look the VP curve, ultrasound, all these kind of things, you have some opening, but you have also some better inflation of the units which are already open. Why I say that? But imagine the normal lung. Normal lung is a sigmoid shape, which is very sexy. So I need more pressure at the beginning, then I have greater units and steeper, and then if I start the volume in the middle of the curve, my compliance is better than at the beginning, in a normal lung without any recruitment. And this is exactly what's happening in RDS when I use the volume pressure curve. And I found I have a gas which is 500 milliliters more. I start with FRC. 500, I say, recruitment is 100%. Well, okay. But maybe the tissue which was closed and open up is 1 gram. So it depends on the words we use and what we mean on the term of recruitment, which is very used with a large different meanings. And let's see, it's late. So for the same opening pressure, recruitability, nature of the disease. I have finished? No, I don't think so. Okay. And now we arrive to the opening and closing. The opening and closing is a long story which has three components, which are one paper of Mead, theoretical, which was proved. No, I don't tell you, read the paper. And the second was the editorial by Lachman, Open the Lung, Keep it Open. And the third were experiments in isolated rat lungs done by Tremblay, Valenza, Muschedere, and so on, that found that if you have less people, you have more cytokine around. There was one paper of Ranieri in which we found that if you have protective strategy with higher people, you have a little bit less of cytokine, nothing impressive, and not necessarily linked to opening and closing, because they may have unhomogeneity of the lung, even if I have two regions with a little bit different elasticity. So one thing is opening and closing. Another thing is dangerous or not? And you know, the question is extremely relevant from a clinical point of view. Because if you marry, as the Brazilian, the concept of that whatever opening and closing is terrible, you need big PEEP. That means you must have a PEEP greater than 20 if you want to keep all open whatever has been recruited. That means your heart becomes like this, compressed by two lungs which become almost stone. Because at that pressure, you are close to the total lung capacity. And you can use also very small tidal volume, as in high frequency oscillation. It's not an irrelevant question. I had a discussion yesterday with Bellani about the protective lung strategy. Protective from what? Protective from the doctors. We do not protect versus the RDS. We protect around a possible mistake. Here is an old example that even on 20 of PEEP, part of the lung makes gymnastic. Then we examined it very recently, has been just published, no? With Cressoni. A paper in which we examined, I think, 33 patients, something like that, in which, different from many other studies, the most of these patients had a severe RDS, and about half of the severe RDS, it was a majority, was on ECMO, so on an extracorporeal support. It was quite impressive to see that, look, this is the recruited tissue. Pressure 15, 25, 35. This is end expiration. This is the inspiratory pressure starting from 5 of PEEP, and you recruit this amount of tissue. This is the end expiratory pressure starting with PEEP, starting from 15 of PEEP, and this is the amount of the recruitment in this series in which more represented were the patient with the higher recruitability. That means that 5 and 15, you have a little bit less, not significant, but who cares about the PEEP? The meaning is that the consistent fraction of the lung was opening and closing. If I want to keep open everything here, I have to use a pressure as such as to stay at this level, which means kill the patient. And mean ignoring completely the hemodynamics. This was a Caironi, in which the message was the same. What they say was not exactly the same, because in this patient, we had a different collection of patients. They were less severe, but still some opening closing was present also in patients with lower recruitability. This one, 20 grams versus under 20. There is some problem with this slide. The recruitment pressure curve for the patient with a mild, with moderate, with severe RDS, and with severe RDS in ECMO, which are the more severe within the severe. And what the curve should show is just that you have more in patients with RDS severe, even at 35 centimeter of pressure. If you recruit at 45, recruitment maneuver, you open up. About 30% of the lung in severe RDS and moderate severe is closed at 30 centimeter plateau is closed. That means between 30 and 45, I can open 30% of the recruited lung. Let's see now, I open up 30% of the lung. If I do not provide a pressure as such to prevent, I have open and closing. But this pressure will be around 25. If I keep at 15, I will have a progressive closure of the lung. And everybody knows, because there is a big fashion of the recruitment maneuver, that you put a gas, very high pressure, the PO2 goes up, and then the PO2 starts to go down. So at the end, is dangerous the opening and closing? To see, try to look in this way. The science, how proceed the science and the knowledge since the times of Aristotle, Galileo, up to Popper. I have a series of observations, okay? And observation makes me a general hypothesis. Observation is that the lung with RDS open and close in a different amount, in different conditions, in some patients, and in a very high. Some experimental data tell me that opening closes of the right lung is associated with the cytokine. The mid experiment tell me that theoretically the opening and closing is associated with a big pressure, local pressure. Okay? If so, which is the hypothesis? If I prevent opening and closing, I will have a better outcome, right? Galileo said, okay, good idea. Now you have to prove experimentally. So what kind of experiment we had? We had an experiment called RCT. And we did 3 randomized trials, which had a different name, but this was the meaning, in which I compared big atelectatic trauma, or let's see, higher atelectatic trauma, having as average 5-6 of PEEP, versus lower atelectatic trauma, which is around 15 of PEEP. In the general population, what's happened? Absolutely nothing. That means that the hypothesis did not prove the thesis that opening and closes is associated with greater damage than some volotrauma, as an example, provided at 15, if exist. We have to accept that. And you say, haha, you are very ignorant, an old man. You forget that if we do the meta-analysis of the meta-analysis of the meta-analysis, we protect everything, because there is a little subgroup, the more severe, which benefit of PEEP, a higher PEEP, and the more severe, the lower PEEP. Forgetting one thing, that if I have a big patient with a big recruitability, without opening all the lung, I need anyway some higher PEEP to provide the same gas exchange, just for PEEP. The PEEP just to provide a better or decent oxygenation. And if I want to have the same oxygenation, let's say 60 or 70, I use higher PEEP, I have to use higher PEEP in a patient with severe RDS than in a patient without severe RDS. That's it. So I think it's time. I don't want to tell you the recipe, because until 2 years ago I was absolutely convinced, okay, mild RDS, who cares? Middle RDS, moderate, 10 OP. Why not 15? Why? Because 10 is more reasonable, between 10 and 15, okay. Severe RDS, greater than 15, which is maybe true in terms of oxygenation. But I think we should forget the idea that opening closing is a so terrible thing. And the recruitment maneuver is something salvific instead of killing the lung. I thank you for the attention.